radiating from the Lone Star State and stretching from coast to coast and border to border. This is On Radio, the weekly download from your family of companies: CMS Wireless, Enertech, ET Tower, Legacy, and Mountain Wireless. Welcome to On Radio.
Welcome to On Radio, everybody. I am Ethan, your host, also known as the Hankster. And you know what? Today we don't have Jim talking with us, but we do have the Hankster. So I'm going to make do with what I have been given in my abilities to host this program, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Today we are talking to someone that you guys might be very familiar with already, a voice at least that you're familiar with, Cameron Swanson, and he is our safety director over there at Ontivity. And I think it's going to be a really interesting interview because he's a really cool guy. I've met him multiple times, and I think he's doing a really good job over there. So welcome to the show, Cameron.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And you're already giving me more credit than I probably deserve. But you know what? For the sake of today's podcast, I am going to take it.
All right. Sounds good. So your official title is Director of Environmental Health and Safety. Would you mind breaking that down for us? What does that mean, and what does that entail?
Man, so right off the bat, I'm a little confused because I always thought it was Director of Janitorial Services, but I guess I didn't get the memo. No, I'm just kidding. No, and I don't mean to paint a negative connotation over what it is that I do, but sometimes, with the job, it entails a lot of different things that we end up having to do on a daily basis. But ultimately, my official title is Director of EH&S. It was a long road to get to where I'm at. The long story short is ultimately my goal is to make sure that all the men and women, no matter what role you serve within the organization, that it's a good experience, that those individuals are able to come to work and perform their duties safely and ultimately get home to their families better than what it was in which we got them. So all things safety, and that obviously goes into other areas of the business as well. At the end of the day, I firmly believe that there's no one silo of the business that doesn't affect the other. At the end of the day, everything is tied together, right? You have a good, solid safety program, 9 times out of 10, you're going to have a good operational team. Same thing goes back for safety. If you have a good safety program, it's because you have darn good folks in operations and those boots on the ground that are expected to get the job done every day. So I'm just a piece of the puzzle. By no means is the success or the failure of the safety program on any one person's shoulders. It really is a team effort.
That's really cool. And you talk about your long journey getting to where you're at now. And you've got 20 years experience, right, with the company, with Enertech. Is that 20 years experience with Enertech specifically, or is it kind of split up between different companies?
So I got into the industry in 2003, so I am just shy of, it was late May of 2003 is whenever I got into the industry. And literally I joke around, I was a gopher, right? That's I wasn't even good enough to be called a green hand. I was just a gopher. It was hey, go for this, go for that, go for this, right? And I still managed to screw that up somehow, but here I am, right? 19 years later, almost 20 years later, here I am. It's been a long journey. But it's been a good one. And one of the things that I often say to many different people, and matter of fact, I was just having this conversation with my brother-in-law the other day. There is not very many people that can say that they've only been in one industry their whole adult life. I mean, if you really think about it, a lot of folks, they bounce around between 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 different professions before they actually land on what it is that they do. And I think that's a true testament to how awesome it is, the industry, the telecommunications industry in which we work. It's so diverse. It's so different. It takes so many different skill sets every day is an interesting day. It really does keep you plugged in, and it's awesome to be a part of an organization and an industry such as we are.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. I mean, I wouldn't have the opportunities I have in my media world anywhere else. I mean, in a way, I mean, I would, but I feel like they have given me a very unique sort of opportunity in that. So it takes a level of passion to be a safety officer. So where does that passion for safety come from for you? Was there some stuff in your past, or how did you get into the role that you're in? And obviously you love your job, you're still there, right? So kind of break that down for us.
Sometimes I think that there's many different seasons to an individual's life as they grow and they try to figure out the type of person in which they want to be. But one thing that's always been really consistent with me is that I like making things better. I like, and not necessarily just things, anything,
Yeah.
anyone I like making better. And in order to make somebody better or make something better, you have to be able to ensure that it's going to be around.
Yeah, that's true.
And how do you make sure that something's going to be around if you can't maintain its quality or protect it to some extent, right? So the first thing you got to do is you got to take whatever it is, whether it's an asset, whether it's something that you're investing in, whether it's an individual that you're investing your time into, whether it's a business, a safety program, whatever. The first thing is you have to make sure that it has a good foundation. And that's what is so good about the core value in which we have is that I'm surrounded with a number, many different people all the way from the top down that agree that you can't really and truly have something great unless you have a great foundation, and that foundation for us is safety. And once you have a good, safe culture and a good, safe foundation, then you can build whatever it is that you want on top of it. So for me, getting back to the basics is that how did I get into this? Is that I honestly, I just stumbled into it. I think there was other people that were able to see what it was that made me tick, and they said, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And I'm like, "Hey, let's go. Let's make it happen." Like I'll do it. And so obviously it came with a lot of training and a lot of experience, and there's a lot of battle scars that I obtained over the years is, coming up through the ranks from being a gopher, as I alluded to being a green hand, a tower technician, to a crew lead, to a construction manager, to eventually owning my own business, to, there's all these different experiences and levels in which I was exposed to that really gives you a good perspective of what it really takes at the end of the day to do what it is that I do.
Yeah. And so a lot of people maybe have confusion about like what exactly you do. As far as like a lot of people think of you as like the police, right? You show up at the site and you're gonna hand out tickets, right? And that's not what your role really is, right? And so maybe enlighten our folks and some of the other people that listen from who are in the industry of like what does like the head honcho safety guy of a company like Ontivity do?
I try to, I don't know if this is necessarily the right analogy to use, but imagine a wooden boat out in the middle of a lake with a bunch of holes in it, right?
Yeah.
And I sometimes feel like that's my job. It's like I'm the guy in the middle of the boat with my fingers and toes in all the holes and trying to like keep everything together. And I mean, that may be a little bit of an exaggeration,
Yeah.
but going back to my prior employers and your previous question is that, not all my time was served with Intertech Resources or the Ontivity family of companies, so to say. As I mentioned earlier, I was part of an organization that was acquired by Intertech Resources. But before that, I'd worked for some other companies that it was very much so a safety police mentality, right? It was the idea that hey, I'm out here, I'm going to do a safety audit, and if I don't find something wrong, I'm not doing my job. So it's almost like those individuals were having to justify their position. And they were the safety police. And I'll be honest with you, nobody likes the safety police. And because there's so many people out there that operate under that mantra or that mentality that, hey, I have to find something wrong, regardless of how good of a job you're doing, I am going to find some way to kick you in the shin. Like, that's given a real negative stigma around safety professionals in general. Like the common saying is like, you get out of the truck, you show up on the job site, you put on your hard hat, and they're like, I didn't do it. And you're like, hey, I'm not here to find you. I'm not here to punish you. Like, we're cool. Like, matter of fact, do you got a load rope, or you got a wrench, or you got something that you need me to do? I mean, you need me to hold that for you? Hey, you want me to help you dig this ditch? I mean, that is really ultimately what it is. We put our boots on one leg at a time, just like everybody else. And ultimately, we are here to be the voice and to have the backs of the men and women that are working in the field. It really is a team effort. And at the end of the day, are we always going to see eye to eye? No. Are there going to be some cases where we have to make some corrective actions, where we have to have some tough conversations? Yes. But it's not a tough conversation for the sake of being punitive. It's a tough conversation for the sake of making that individual better, or that crew better, or that organization better, right? That is ultimately what makes me tick, is making something better, understanding what it is that where the problem originates from, and what can we do to fix it, right? And I think there's a lot of men and women within our organization that they're fixers, they're doers. They've been charged with a task to go out and get something done, and they perform darn well, like really, really well. Yeah. It's just that's just the nature of the beast. But nobody likes the safety police.
No, nobody does. So I guess the question would be, is obviously like you're not it for our safety team. So how does the structure within Ontivity and then within the companies underneath that sort of work so that we can not be the safety police, but be those guys that can permeate this culture of safety so that the guys can get home every day, or not home every day, but back home safely, either at the end of the week or every day.
So I have surrounded myself, or I say I've been fortunate enough to surround myself with a number of really, really great folks that arguably are smarter than me in so many different ways. I remember Eric Chase saying a long time ago, if you're the smartest guy in the room, there's a problem, right? And I can definitely say that with, for example, Matthew Page over at Legacy. He's great when it comes to what it takes to really execute good, solid training. And he's like our resident go-to fall protection expert. We got Paul Fuentes, which is really process oriented, and he knows and understands what it takes to get policy updates out and that bit. He grabs the bull by the horn. We have Dan Hancock, another great guy that has years and years and years of industry experience, from gym pole stuff down to the wireless and cellular stuff. We got Justin Richards. He's prior enforcement for like law enforcement. So he brings that side of it, the DOT side of things, into the mix. Ronnie Delvin, he's a guy, he's old enough, and he's been doing this before I even thought about doing this, right? So surrounding yourselves with folks that know the ins and outs ultimately help us make sure that collectively as a team, we're being led in the right direction. It's not a dictatorship. It's not one person at the top that's saying, this is the direction we're going, thou shall go this direction, right? Yeah. It really is a group of individuals that are very passionate about providing a safe work environment. And we bounce these ideas off of each other. I mean, sometimes you should be a fly on the wall on some of these debates in which we have, because sometimes it can get rather passionate, and that's good. That's good. We want to be challenged on the direction in which we're going. in the processes in which we're creating, because ultimately at the end of the day, we have to remember who our customer is, and that is our internal customer are the men and women that are in the field. And the second that we lose that thought process, the second that we lose that understanding, is the second that we're going in the wrong direction. So making sure that we provide the men and women in the field with a product or with a service that ultimately makes their life better starts with us knowing and understanding who our customer is, and from time to time being called out on, a certain process or procedure that is ultimately going to make us better as well.
That's really cool. Just hearing that process takes place, and that it's a sort of a conglomeration of all the different companies coming together to make these decisions. All right, everybody. So thank you so much for joining us on Radio. This is Ethan the Hangster, and since Jim says I am out, but I'll just say stay safe, everybody. This is the Hangster.